The entire cabin fell silent as Captain Jasmine Taylor stood in her uniform, staring at the same flight attendant who'd ordered her to wait at the back with the others, just 30 minutes earlier. The attendant's face drained of color. Jasmine's hand hovered over the flight controls. Before we dive into this powerful story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button and join our community of storytellers. The journey we're about to embark on shows how a single moment of prejudice can change lives forever. The alarm blared at 4:30 in the morning, but Jasmine Taylor was already awake. Sleep had evaded her most of the night, her mind racing with checklists and protocols. Today wasn't just another day at work. Today, she would command her first flight as captain. Jasmine's journey to the captain's seat hadn't been easy. As the daughter of James Taylor, a dedicated aircraft mechanic for 30 years, aviation ran in her blood. Her childhood bedroom walls weren't decorated with pop stars or movie posters but with aircraft schematics and photos of pioneering black pilots like Bessie Coleman and William J. Powell. While other kids dreamed of becoming doctors or teachers, Jasmine had only one vision: soaring through the clouds with 4 stripes on her shoulders. "You'll have to work twice as hard to get half as far," her father had warned her when she announced her intention to become a pilot at age 12. It wasn't discouragement but preparation for the reality she would face. Now, 16 years later, at 28, Jasmine had proven she was willing to work not just twice as hard, but 3 times, 4 times, whatever it took. The morning sunlight filtered through her apartment blinds as she meticulously pressed her uniform. The crisp white shirt, the dark pants, and most importantly, the jacket with 4 gold stripes that she had earned through thousands of flight hours, rigorous evaluations, and overcoming countless obstacles. She ran her fingers over the stripes, still hardly believing they were hers. Graduating at the top of her class from aviation school despite working 2 jobs to cover tuition, Jasmine had quickly distinguished herself at Skyway Airlines. Her technical knowledge was impeccable, her flying intuitive yet precise, her decision-making sound. On paper, her rise through the ranks should have been swift and smooth. The reality had been anything but. "Taylor, did you triple-check those calculations?" Flight instructors would ask, despite her answers always being correct. "You sure you can handle this aircraft?" Senior pilots would question, despite her performance metrics exceeding their own. "Who helped you with this flight plan?" Examiners would inquire, as if she couldn't possibly have created such detailed work herself. Every accomplishment came with an asterisk. Every success was treated as an anomaly rather than evidence of her capability. The microaggressions were constant: surprised looks when she introduced herself as First Officer Taylor, passengers asking to speak to the real pilot, colleagues taking credit for her ideas in meetings. Jasmine's phone buzzed with a text from Anthony Washington, her best friend and fellow pilot at Skyway. "Ready for the big day, Captain Taylor? You're going to crush it." Anthony had been her rock through the challenges at Skyway. As one of the few other black pilots at the airline, he understood some of her struggles, but even he couldn't fully grasp what it meant to be both black and female in a cockpit. His path, while not without obstacles, hadn't included being mistaken for a flight attendant at every turn or having passengers openly question if a woman should be flying their plane. Jasmine texted back, "As ready as I'll ever be. See you at the airport." She packed her flight bag with the same precision she applied to everything in her professional life. Her personal checklist, additional navigation charts, backup reading glasses, protein bars, and the small photo of her father standing proudly beside the first aircraft he ever serviced. Everything had its place, everything was accounted for. Today's flight to Atlanta was more than just her captain debut. Skyway executives had been evaluating pilots for new international routes to South Africa and Ghana. As one of the few pilots with extensive experience flying into challenging African airports during her volunteer work with humanitarian aviation groups, Jasmine was technically a strong candidate. But she knew politics and perception often outweighed qualifications. The drive to the airport was quiet, the roads nearly empty in the pre-dawn darkness. Jasmine mentally reviewed the day's flight details, weather patterns showed clear skies with some turbulence expected near Atlanta. The aircraft was a Boeing 737-800 she knew intimately. Passenger count was nearly full at 162. She parked in the crew lot, shouldering her flight bag and carrying her uniform jacket and captain's hat in a garment bag. Though she could have arrived in uniform, Jasmine preferred to change at the airport. There was something ceremonial about transforming from civilian to captain in the spaces where she would command. Walking through the employee entrance, Jasmine took a deep breath. Today, she would prove herself. Again. As she had done countless times before. As she would likely need to do countless times in the future. The weight of being not just a pilot but a representative of what was possible for young black women who dreamed of the skies sat heavily on her shoulders, alongside those 4 gold stripes she had earned through unwavering determination. "Good morning, Captain Taylor," said the security guard, emphasizing her new title with genuine warmth. Small victories, Jasmine thought, as she smiled and continued toward the crew briefing area. Today would be different. Today would be the culmination of everything she had worked for. Today, she would finally take command. The airport hummed with early morning activity as Jasmine navigated through security checkpoints and crowded terminals. Business travelers clutched coffee cups like lifelines, families corralled sleepy children, and gate agents announced final boarding calls for red-eye flights. It was a familiar symphony to Jasmine's ears, the soundtrack of her professional life. She glanced at her watch. 6:15. Still plenty of time before the 7:30 departure to Atlanta. As she approached the gate area for Skyway Flight 1523, she noticed the crew had already gathered for their briefing. At the center of the huddle stood Diane Patterson, a flight attendant with 27 years at Skyway. Her perfectly coiffed blonde hair hadn't changed style in 2 decades, much like her attitudes about who belonged in aviation. Diane was considered old school by most crew members, a diplomatic way of saying she preferred things as they were in the good old days, when cockpits were exclusively male domains and flight attendants were called stewardesses. "We have some VIPs in first class today," Diane was saying, her voice carrying the authoritative tone she'd perfected over decades of instructing passengers on safety procedures. The chairman of Regional Banking Corporation and his executive team. They're frequent flyers and personal friends with our CEO, so everything needs to be perfect. Jasmine recognized most of the crew from previous flights, though she'd never worked directly with Diane before. The senior flight attendant's reputation preceded her. She was known for running her cabin with military precision and maintaining close relationships with airline management. Crew members either loved or feared her, but everyone respected her influence. As Jasmine approached the group, she noticed a tall, blond man in a pilot's uniform, Bradley Thompson, her co-pilot for today's flight. She'd flown with him once before as first officer, finding him technically competent but somewhat dismissive of her input. "Good morning," Jasmine said, stepping into the circle. Several crew members nodded in acknowledgement, but Diane continued speaking as if Jasmine hadn't arrived. "Remember, these executives will be evaluating our service for the potential international route expansion." "Excuse me," Jasmine tried again, slightly louder. "I'm just joining the..." "We're in the middle of a crew briefing," Diane interrupted, barely glancing at Jasmine. "Passenger boarding doesn't begin for another 45 minutes. "I understand, but Jasmine began. "If you need assistance, the customer service desk is over there," Diane pointed sharply, finally turning to face Jasmine. Her eyes narrowed as she looked Jasmine up and down, taking in her civilian clothes and the garment bag. "Or are you a standby passenger? Either way, you'll need to wait elsewhere while we prepare for our flight." Jasmine straightened her shoulders. "Actually, I'm Captain Taylor. I'll be commanding this flight." A flicker of something, surprise, disbelief, perhaps irritation, crossed Diane's face. "You're not in uniform, and Captain Hayes was scheduled for this route. There was a last-minute change. Captain Hayes was reassigned to the London route. I have my credentials right here." Jasmine reached for her airline ID. "I've been briefing this crew for 15 minutes with no mention of a captain change," Diane said dismissively, turning back to the group without looking at Jasmine's ID. "Now, as I was saying about the VIP service requirements. I can verify my assignment," Jasmine persisted, "if you'll just." "Look," Diane snapped, her patience visibly thinning, "we are in a staff meeting. Please wait at the back with the others until we're ready for general boarding." The terminal seemed to quiet around them, though Jasmine knew it was just her focus narrowing to this humiliating moment. Several nearby passengers looked up from their phones and tablets, watching the exchange with undisguised interest. Some wore expressions of second-hand embarrassment, while others, particularly a group of older white men in business suits, seemed almost amused by the spectacle. "I'm not a passenger," Jasmine said firmly, keeping her voice level despite the anger building inside her. "I'm the captain assigned to this flight. If you check the crew manifest." "I know every captain in this airline," Diane cut her off again. "And I don't have time for this right now. I'm busy with actual crew members." She turned her back fully on Jasmine, physically dismissing her from the conversation. Bradley Thompson, who had been silently watching the exchange, made brief eye contact with Jasmine but said nothing. Not a word of confirmation, not a simple, "she's right," that could have immediately defused the situation. Just silent complicity as Jasmine stood there, publicly humiliated. Jasmine's hand tightened around her ID badge. She could force the issue, create a scene, demand respect. But years of navigating spaces that weren't designed for her had taught her painful lessons about when to fight and when to strategize. This public spectacle wouldn't serve her or her career. With as much dignity as she could muster, Jasmine stepped away from the group and moved to a quieter corner of the gate area. Her hands shook slightly as she pulled out her phone and called Anthony. "Hey, what's up? Shouldn't you be in pre-flight by now?" Anthony answered. "The crew doesn't know I'm their captain," Jasmine said quietly. "Or rather, Diane Patterson doesn't want to know." "Diane? Oh man, you got the dragon lady. She's old guard, for sure. She told me to wait at the back with the others and wouldn't even look at my ID." Anthony was silent for a moment. "What are you going to do?" Jasmine watched as the crew continued their briefing, Diane's animated gesture suggesting she was thoroughly enjoying her authority. "I'm going to change into my uniform, and then I'm going to do my job. With perfect professionalism. Want me to come down there? I can be at your gate in 10 minutes. "No," Jasmine said firmly. "I've handled worse. This is just one more test." She ended the call and headed toward the restroom, garment bag in hand. Each step was measured, controlled, just like her emotions needed to be. In the privacy of the restroom, Jasmine changed into her captain's uniform, the transformation feeling more significant than ever before. As she fastened each button, adjusted each stripe, and finally placed the captain's hat on her head, she was armoring herself not just for flight but for battle, the ongoing fight to be seen, to be respected, to simply exist in the space she had earned through relentless work and unshakable determination. Jasmine studied her reflection in the mirror, Captain Jasmine Taylor, ready to command not just an aircraft but her own narrative. Whatever happened next, she would face it with the same precision and control she applied to every aspect of her professional life. She straightened her hat, squared her shoulders, and prepared to return to the gate, this time, unmistakably as the captain. Jasmine strode confidently toward gate C-12, her captain's uniform impeccably pressed, each gold stripe on her sleeves catching the fluorescent airport lighting. The weight of her decision-making authority was reflected in her purposeful gait. She was no longer just Jasmine Taylor, she was Captain Taylor, commander of Flight 1523 to Atlanta. As she approached the crew, still huddled around Diane Patterson, heads began to turn. Conversations faltered mid-sentence as crew members noticed her approach. The transformation was undeniable, where minutes ago stood a dismissed figure in civilian clothes, now approached the unmistakable presence of a captain. Diane was the last to turn, still animatedly discussing beverage service for the VIP passengers. When she finally registered the sudden silence among her crew, she pivoted, and froze. Jasmine stopped directly in front of her, standing at her full height. "Good morning. I'm Captain Jasmine Taylor, commanding Skyway Flight 1523 to Atlanta. I believe we have a pre-flight briefing to complete." The color drained from Diane's face in stages, like an elevator descending floors. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed, then opened again. There must be some mistake." "No mistake," Jasmine replied evenly. "As I attempted to explain earlier, there was a crew change. Captain Hayes was reassigned to the London route." She turned to address the entire crew. "I'm looking forward to working with all of you today. Safety, as always, is our primary concern, followed by passenger comfort and schedule adherence." Bradley Thompson stepped forward, extending his hand with a forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "First Officer Thompson. Looking forward to flying with you, Captain." The emphasis on her title sounded almost like a question. "We've flown together before, First Officer Thompson." "Last month's Chicago route," Jasmine reminded him, accepting his handshake with a firm grip. "I was your first officer then." "Right, of course," Bradley nodded, his expression revealing he'd either forgotten or hadn't paid enough attention to remember her. Diane seemed to recover some of her composure, though her face had taken on a reddish hue. "Captain Taylor, I apologize for the confusion earlier. Had you been in uniform?" "My credentials were valid regardless of my attire," Jasmine interrupted smoothly. "Now, shall we continue with the briefing? We have 35 minutes until boarding begins." The dynamics of the group had shifted dramatically. Flight attendants who had previously ignored Jasmine now stood attentively, their postures straightened. Bradley appeared uncomfortable, shifting his weight from one foot to another. Diane's mouth formed a tight line, her fingers fidgeting with her employee badge. "Yes, well," Diane continued with forced brightness, "as I was explaining, we have the Regional Banking Corporation executives in first class. They're close personal friends with our CEO." "Thank you for that information," Jasmine nodded. "Now let's review today's flight details. We're expecting some turbulence as we approach Atlanta, particularly during our descent. Please ensure all service is completed at least 30 minutes before landing, and be prepared for an extended seatbelt requirement." As Jasmine took control of the briefing, she noticed Diane whispering to another flight attendant, both of them glancing in her direction. The message was clear: Diane was not going to let this embarrassment go easily. The briefing concluded, and the crew dispersed to their pre-flight duties. Jasmine was about to head to the cockpit for her preliminary checks when a tall, gray-haired man in a Skyway management uniform approached. "Captain Taylor." "William Hayes, Flight Operations Manager." His handshake was brief, his smile perfunctory. "I understand you're taking Captain Robert Hayes' position today. Any relation?" "No relation, sir," Jasmine replied. "Just a coincidence of names." William's eyes narrowed slightly. "This is your first flight as captain, correct?" "Yes, sir. And quite a significant one, with our VIP passengers." William pulled out a tablet and began scrolling through what appeared to be Jasmine's file. "I see you've logged the required hours, but experience isn't just about numbers. Have you reviewed the executive briefing for this flight? The special handling procedures for our VIPs?" Jasmine maintained her professional demeanor despite the clear implication that she might be unprepared. "Yes, sir. I received the briefing yesterday when I was assigned to this flight. The executives will be given priority boarding, preferred meal service, and special attention from the cabin crew. However, my primary responsibility remains the safe operation of this aircraft for all 162 passengers on board." William's eyebrows rose slightly at her firm response. "Indeed. Well, I'll be observing today's flight. Standard procedure for a captain's debut." There was nothing standard about a flight operations manager personally observing a routine domestic flight, and they both knew it. "I welcome your observation, sir," Jasmine replied coolly. As she walked toward the jet bridge for her external inspection, Jasmine noticed passengers watching her with varying expressions. An elderly white woman clutched her handbag tighter as Jasmine passed. A young black girl nudged her mother and pointed excitedly. A middle-aged businessman in an expensive suit frowned and checked his ticket, as if confirming he was on the right flight. Near the gate desk, she overheard a passenger speaking to one of the flight attendants. "Is she really the pilot? She looks so young. Are you sure she has enough experience?" The flight attendant, not Diane, thankfully, responded professionally. "Captain Taylor is fully qualified and one of our most skilled pilots. You're in excellent hands today." Jasmine continued walking, her face betraying none of the emotions churning beneath her composed exterior. This was nothing new. Every flight included at least one passenger who questioned her capabilities based solely on her appearance. Today would be no different, except that she now carried the ultimate responsibility for the aircraft and everyone aboard. During her external inspection, Jasmine meticulously checked every aspect of the aircraft, from control surfaces to engine intakes. As she completed her walk around and returned to the jet bridge, she found Diane waiting, a clipboard in hand. "Captain," Diane began, her tone overly formal, "I've taken the liberty of rearranging the meal service timing based on my experience with the Atlanta route. I've found that serving earlier avoids turbulence issues." The suggestion directly contradicted Jasmine's briefing instructions and undermined her authority. "Thank you for your input, Ms. Patterson, but we'll maintain the service schedule as I outlined. The weather patterns today are different from what you may have experienced previously." Diane's smile tightened. "Of course, but these VIPs expect a certain level of service. I've handled them many times before. And they'll receive excellent service within the safety parameters I've established," Jasmine replied firmly. "If you have concerns about completing service in the adjusted timeframe, we can discuss alternative approaches that don't compromise our turbulence preparation." "I'm only trying to help," Diane said, her voice taking on a condescending tone. "First flights as captain can be overwhelming. So many details to manage." "I appreciate your concern," Jasmine said evenly, "but I assure you, I'm fully prepared to command this flight. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to complete my pre-flight checks." In the cockpit, Jasmine found Bradley already going through the preliminary system checks. He glanced up as she entered. "Everything okay out there?" Seemed like a tense conversation with Diane. "Everything's fine," Jasmine replied, settling into the captain's seat, her seat now. "Let's focus on our pre-flight checks." As they worked through the checklist, Jasmine noticed Bradley double-checking her entries more carefully than necessary. When she programmed the flight management computer, he leaned over to verify her inputs. When she radioed for weather updates, he adjusted his headset as if preparing to correct her. "Is there a problem, First Officer Thompson?" Jasmine finally asked after he repeated a check she had already completed. "No problem," he replied quickly. "Just being thorough. Big responsibility today, with the executives on board." "Every flight is a big responsibility, regardless of who's in the cabin," Jasmine stated. 162 lives depend on us doing our jobs correctly." Before Bradley could respond, a warning light illuminated on the navigation panel. "Nav system showing an error," he said, reaching for the reset switch. "Wait," Jasmine instructed, studying the display. "Let's identify the issue before attempting a reset." She pulled out the technical reference guide and quickly located the specific error code. "This indicates a potential software conflict. We need to power down the system completely before restart, or we risk corrupting the backup systems too." Bradley withdrew his hand from the switch. "Right. Of course." As Jasmine correctly resolved the navigation issue, she couldn't help but feel the weight of every action, every decision being scrutinized not just for correctness but for any hint of inadequacy. The cockpit, normally her sanctuary of ordered procedures and clear protocols, felt charged with unspoken tension. Through the cockpit door, she could hear the first passengers boarding, the routine welcome announcements, the hum of conversation. Soon, she would be responsible for guiding this massive machine into the sky, navigating through whatever challenges lay ahead. But first, she had to navigate the human terrain of bias and skepticism that had followed her into the very seat she had earned through years of dedication and excellence. Jasmine took a deep breath and continued her methodical preparation. The sky didn't care about the color of her skin or the gender of the hands on the controls. In the air, only competence mattered. And in that arena, she knew with absolute certainty, she belonged at the head of the cockpit. As the boarding process continued, Jasmine completed her final cockpit preparations with the precision that had become her trademark. Through the open cockpit door, she overheard snippets of conversation from the cabin, including Diane's voice, louder than necessary, speaking to a passenger near the front of the plane. "Yes, sir, we have an experienced flight team today. First Officer Thompson has over 8,000 hours on this aircraft type. The real pilot, the co-pilot, will ensure everything runs smoothly." Jasmine's hands paused momentarily over the controls before continuing their work. The implications were clear. Diane was undermining her authority to passengers, suggesting Bradley was the real pilot despite his junior position. It was a subtle tactic, but one that could erode passenger confidence and create unnecessary anxiety. "Weather update from dispatch," Bradley announced, reviewing the newly received information. "Looks like the storm system over Tennessee has intensified. We might need to adjust our route." Jasmine studied the weather patterns on her display. The line of thunderstorms was indeed strengthening, with tops reaching 45,000 feet, well above their planned cruising altitude of 35,000. "We'll need to coordinate with ATC for a more easterly route," she decided. "The western option would burn too much fuel if we had to circumnavigate the entire system." Bradley frowned. "I've flown through similar conditions on the western route before. It might save us time rather than dealing with the congested eastern corridors." "The forecast shows the cells merging within the next hour," Jasmine explained. "What might have been flyable gaps could close by the time we reach that airspace. Safety margin takes priority over schedule." "Just offering my experience," Bradley said with a shrug that suggested her caution was excessive. The interaction reminded Jasmine of her early training days, when her instructor, Captain Gerald Whitfield, had questioned her every decision with the same dismissive attitude. During a particularly challenging simulation, she'd chosen to divert to an alternate airport rather than attempt a dangerous landing in simulated severe crosswinds. "Playing it safe again, Taylor," Captain Whitfield had sneered. "Sometimes you need to push the envelope to be a real pilot." The following week, another trainee, a white male pilot with less experience than Jasmine, made exactly the same decision in the same scenario and was praised for his mature judgment and excellent risk assessment. That day, Jasmine had gone home and cried for the first and last time over the unfairness of her situation. Then she had dried her tears, studied the flight manuals until 3 in the morning, and returned the next day more prepared than anyone else in her class. If she had to be perfect to be considered adequate, then perfect she would be. A crackle came through her headset as air traffic control responded to their pushback request. "Skyway 1523, this is ground control. You're cleared for pushback from gate Charlie 12. Roger, ground control." "Skyway 1523 pushing back from Charlie 12, Jasmine responded clearly. There was a brief pause before the controller replied, "Was that the captain speaking?" "Affirmative, ground control. Captain Taylor commanding Skyway 1523, she confirmed." "Roger that." "Captain," came the response, the slight pause before her title impossible to miss. As the aircraft began its pushback from the gate, the cockpit phone buzzed. Jasmine answered to hear William Hayes' voice. "Captain Taylor, we're showing a 15-minute delay from scheduled departure. Can you explain the reason?" "We had a navigation system error that required a full restart," Jasmine explained. "It's resolved now, and we're beginning pushback." Is there a reason Thompson couldn't handle that issue? He's certified on all 737 systems, William asked, directing the question as if Bradley should have been making the decisions. First Officer Thompson and I resolved the issue together, following standard protocols, Jasmine replied diplomatically. As captain, I made the final determination on the appropriate fix. I see, William responded, his tone suggesting he didn't fully accept her explanation. The executives are asking about the delay. Keep it tight from here on out. The call ended, and Jasmine refocused on the departure procedures. As she adjusted her headset, she noticed something wrong. The audio was cutting in and out, making communications difficult to hear. She removed the headset to examine it and discovered that several wires inside had been partially disconnected, as if someone had deliberately tampered with the equipment. Problem? Bradley asked, watching her inspect the headset. Equipment issue, Jasmine replied, reaching for the backup headset stored in the cockpit. She didn't voice her suspicions, but filed the information away as another obstacle being placed in her path. With the new headset functioning properly, Jasmine continued coordinating their departure. The aircraft taxied toward the runway, joining the queue of planes waiting for takeoff clearance. Through the cabin interphone, Diane reported that all passengers were secured for departure, except for a late arrival of VIP guests who were just boarding. Jasmine checked the time. Any further delay would impact their slot in the departure sequence and potentially cause them to miss their approved weather routing. Yet holding a plane for VIPs was an unwritten rule at Skyway, one that pilots were expected to accommodate regardless of operational impacts. Looking out the cockpit window, Jasmine saw a group of men in expensive suits being escorted to the aircraft by ground staff. The regional banking corporation executives had arrived, and from their unhurried pace, they clearly expected the entire flight to wait for their convenience. Once aboard, one of the executives, a silver-haired man with an air of entitled authority, paused at the cockpit door. "I'd like to speak to the captain," he announced, looking past Jasmine directly at Bradley. "I'm Captain Taylor," Jasmine said, turning in her seat to face him directly. "Welcome aboard, sir. We'll be underway momentarily." The executive's eyebrows rose in surprise. "You're the captain?" His gaze flicked to her stripes, then back to her face with poorly disguised skepticism. "Well, that's progressive of Skyway." He turned and continued to his seat without waiting for her response. The subtle dismissal was yet another reminder of the additional scrutiny and doubt Jasmine faced with every flight. But now, as the weight of command rested solely on her shoulders, each of these moments carried greater significance. The confidence of her passengers, her crew, and her superiors could determine not just the success of this flight but the trajectory of her career. As they finally received clearance for takeoff, Jasmine became aware of a new tension in the cabin. Diane had been moving through the aircraft, speaking quietly to crew members at their stations. The flight attendants now wore expressions ranging from confusion to concern, all darting glances toward the cockpit when they thought Jasmine wasn't looking. A final call came through from the gate before departure. "Captain, we've received a message from maintenance that they have concerns about the inspection logs from yesterday. They're asking if you reviewed them before accepting the aircraft." "Yes, I did," Jasmine confirmed. "All maintenance was properly signed off." "Is there a specific concern they're raising now?" "They just wanted verification from the captain," the gate agent replied. "I'll let them know you've confirmed." As Jasmine returned her attention to the imminent takeoff, she couldn't shake the feeling that invisible forces were aligning against her. The delayed executives, the concerned maintenance team, Diane's whispers to the crew, Bradley's subtle challenges to her decisions, each alone might be coincidence, but together they formed a pattern of resistance to her authority. Have you ever faced a situation where people refuse to recognize your authority despite your qualifications? Comment number 1 if you've experienced colleagues undermining you like Diane is doing to Jasmine. Like this video if you believe competence should speak louder than prejudice. And if you want to see more stories about breaking barriers, hit that subscribe button right now. How would you react in Jasmine's position? Would you confront these challenges head-on, or maintain your professionalism despite the obstacles? And what do you think is waiting for her in the skies ahead? Let's find out as our story continues. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Taylor speaking. We're currently number 4 for takeoff, but we've been informed of a potential mechanical issue that requires inspection before departure. Our maintenance team is en route to the aircraft. We appreciate your patience and will provide updates as they become available. Jasmine replaced the cabin announcement handset, the professional veneer of her voice contrasting with the frustration building inside her. The Airport Operations Center had just radioed with a priority maintenance check request, claiming a sensor discrepancy had been flagged in their system. Such last-minute checks were rare unless there was a specific cause for concern. Cutting it close to our departure slot, Bradley commented, checking his watch with exaggerated concern. If we miss it, we could be delayed another 40 minutes with this traffic. Safety comes before schedule, Jasmine replied evenly. Always. In the cabin, the predictable wave of sighs and muttered complaints followed her announcement. Through the partially open cockpit door, Jasmine could hear Diane speaking to passengers in first class. I do apologize for the delay. Sometimes with less experienced captains, these things happen. They tend to be overly cautious. The implication in her tone was clear, the delay was due to Jasmine's inexperience rather than a legitimate safety concern. A different voice responded, one of the executives. Is this typical for your airline? We're already behind schedule. Oh no, sir, Diane replied smoothly. Our senior captains usually run a tight ship. This is an unusual situation. The weather radar on Jasmine's display showed the storm system intensifying further, the line of thunderstorms growing more organized. Every minute of delay increased the possibility that their planned route would become unflyable, requiring a more substantial deviation and additional fuel considerations. A sharp knock on the cockpit door preceded William Hayes' entry. Captain, we have some unhappy passengers back there. The Regional Banking Corporation CEO just told me he might reconsider their corporate contract with Skyway if this flight doesn't depart soon. I understand the concern, sir, Jasmine replied, but we've been directed to wait for a maintenance inspection. I can't override that requirement. William's expression tightened. These executives represent over 20 million in annual revenue. Surely there's a way to expedite this process. Not without compromising safety protocols, Jasmine said firmly. I'd be happy to speak with the executives and explain the situation. That won't be necessary, William replied quickly. Just, try to move things along when maintenance arrives. As if on cue, the maintenance team appeared at the aircraft door, led by an older white technician whose name tag identified him as Ray Simmons, Senior Maintenance Engineer. We've got a pressure sensor discrepancy, Ray announced, entering the cockpit and nodding to Bradley. Control wants us to verify it's not a genuine issue before takeoff. I'm Captain Taylor, Jasmine said, extending her hand. Can you tell me which sensor is showing problems? Ray glanced at her, then back to Bradley, as if expecting the first officer to take charge. When Bradley remained silent, Ray reluctantly turned his attention to Jasmine. Aft cargo hold pressure sensor. Could be nothing, could be a leak. Need to check the maintenance logs from yesterday first. I reviewed those logs during pre-flight, Jasmine stated. There was no mention of sensor issues. Mind if I see those logs myself? Ray asked, his tone suggesting he didn't quite trust her assessment. Jasmine retrieved the maintenance documentation and handed it to him. As Ray flipped through the pages, his frown deepened. These entries aren't complete. There should be a secondary sign-off on the pressure check from the night shift. That wasn't in the logs when I reviewed them, Jasmine said, looking more closely at the documentation. She noticed something strange, the handwriting on several entries appeared different from the technician's signatures, as if someone had added notes after the fact. The realization hit her, the maintenance logs had been improperly handled. Either critical sign-offs had been missed during the previous inspections, or someone had altered the documentation after her review. Either scenario represented a serious procedural violation. "I need to check the actual sensor readings," Ray said, moving toward the access panel beneath the cockpit floor. "This could take a while." Jasmine's mind flashed back to her father's words from early in her career. James Taylor had spent 3 decades ensuring aircraft were safe to fly, and his advice had been unequivocal: never let anyone rush you on safety, Jasmine. Not passengers, not management, not other pilots. When you're captain, those lives are in your hands, and no schedule is worth a single one of them. As Ray conducted his inspection, Bradley shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Maybe we should consider requesting a different aircraft." "The executives." "We'll have to wait," Jasmine interrupted firmly. "If there's a legitimate safety concern with this aircraft, we need to know before we take 162 people into the sky." "Captain," William Hayes called from the cockpit doorway. "May I have a word?" Stepping into the small privacy of the jet bridge, Jasmine found herself facing not just William but also 2 of the banking executives. "Captain Taylor," William began, his voice tight, "Mr. Harrington and Mr. Peterson here have expressed concerns about the delay. They have a critical meeting in Atlanta that now appears in jeopardy." The taller executive, Harrington, didn't bother with pleasantries. "Is this kind of inefficiency standard procedure now? We've been sitting for 45 minutes. "Safety is our standard procedure, sir," Jasmine replied calmly. "We've identified a potential issue with the aircraft that requires inspection before departure." "In my experience," Peterson added with a condescending smile, "these potential issues often seem to arise with, how shall I put this, less traditional flight crews. Perhaps a more experienced captain would have a different assessment." The implication was unmistakable, but Jasmine refused to rise to the bait. "In my experience, sir, physics doesn't care about tradition. A mechanical issue is equally dangerous regardless of who's in command. I understand your frustration, but I won't compromise safety standards for any reason." William looked pained by her direct response. "What Captain Taylor means is that we're doing everything possible to expedite your departure while following our protocols." "Actually," Jasmine corrected, "what I mean is exactly what I said. Now if you'll excuse me, I need to check on the inspection progress." Returning to the cockpit, Jasmine found Ray emerging from the access panel with a troubled expression. "You were right to wait, Captain. There's a genuine pressure inconsistency in the aft cargo area. Could be a sensor malfunction, but could also indicate a seal problem. We need to run a full diagnostic." "How long?" Jasmine asked. "At least an hour, maybe more if we need to replace components." The news sent a ripple of tension through Jasmine's body, but her decision was never in doubt. "Then that's what we'll do. Safety first." Bradley's expression darkened. "An hour? The executives will go ballistic. And we'll miss our weather window completely. Would you prefer we risk a pressure issue at 35,000 feet? Jasmine asked pointedly. "Maybe we should get a second opinion," Bradley suggested. "Ray's been known to be overly cautious. Just like you accused me of being cautious about the weather routing." Jasmine challenged. "Caution keeps people alive in aviation, First Officer Thompson. We're waiting for the full diagnostic." William reappeared at the cockpit door, his face flushed with barely contained anger. "We have a serious situation developing, Captain. The executives have called our CEO directly. The entire crew is about to be put under review if this flight doesn't depart soon. The entire crew will be under much worse than review if we ignore a potential pressure issue and something goes wrong at altitude," Jasmine replied firmly. "I'm making the call to wait for the complete inspection, Mr. Hayes. If the CEO has concerns about that decision, I'm happy to discuss them after we've ensured the aircraft is safe." William's jaw tightened. "You're putting your career on the line with this call, Taylor. I'm putting safety first. That's the job I was hired to do. As William stormed off, Jasmine thought again of her father. When she was 16, he'd been suspended for refusing to sign off on an aircraft that management wanted back in service quickly. The pressure seal he'd flagged as suspicious later proved to be defective, a discovery that potentially saved hundreds of lives. He'd lost 2 weeks' pay but gained something far more valuable, the unshakable knowledge that he'd done the right thing despite the consequences. "My job isn't to be popular," he told Jasmine afterward. "It's to make sure those planes come back down with everyone alive inside them." Now, as a cacophony of complaints echoed from the cabin and Bradley radiated disapproval beside her, Jasmine faced the same choice her father had: stand firm on safety despite the professional risk, or cave to pressure and compromise her principles. It was no choice at all. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced over the intercom, "this is Captain Taylor again. I understand the frustration with our delayed departure. However, our maintenance team has identified a potential pressure issue that requires thorough inspection before we can safely depart. This will take approximately 1 hour to complete. For passengers with tight connections in Atlanta, our gate agents will be coming aboard to assist with rebooking options. The safety of everyone aboard is my highest priority, and I appreciate your understanding." As she set down the handset, Jasmine could feel the weight of 162 expectations pressing against her decision. But heavier still was the responsibility she carried, not just for their physical safety, but for upholding the standards that kept aviation one of the safest forms of transportation in the world. Outside the cockpit, she could hear Diane organizing the other flight attendants. "Tell the passengers in coach it's a captain's decision, nothing we can do about it. Offer the executives in first-class complimentary premium beverages, they'll need it after this mess." Alone in the momentary quiet of the cockpit, with Bradley having stepped out to speak with William, Jasmine allowed herself a single deep breath, the only outward sign of the pressure she felt. Then she turned back to the maintenance documentation, reviewing every detail with the same meticulous care that had defined her career. She was standing alone, but she was standing for something that mattered more than approval, more than convenience, more than even her own career. She was standing for the principle that had guided her from her first day in aviation: safety is never optional. "Captain Taylor." Ray's voice broke through the tense silence that had settled over the cockpit during the hour-long inspection. "You were right to wait. We found a significant issue with the pressure regulation system in the aft cargo hold. If this had failed at cruising altitude, we could have had a serious emergency situation." Jasmine nodded, a mixture of validation and concern washing over her. "How serious are we talking? Worst case? Potential structural damage from pressure differential, possible rapid decompression scenario." Ray shook his head grimly. "Not something you want to deal with at 35,000 feet. Timeline for repairs?" Jasmine asked, already calculating the cascading effects on their flight plan. "We need to replace a valve assembly. 2 hours minimum. This aircraft isn't going anywhere until then." The news settled heavily in the cockpit. Bradley, who had returned just in time to hear Ray's assessment, had the decency to look chagrined at his earlier pushback against the delay. "We need to deplane the passengers," Jasmine decided. "No sense keeping them aboard during repairs." As she made the announcement, the predictable wave of groans and complaints echoed through the cabin. The deplaning process was chaotic, passengers gathering belongings, asking about connections, demanding explanations. Jasmine stood at the aircraft door, professionally addressing concerns while Diane and the other flight attendants assisted. "This is completely unacceptable," barked one of the banking executives, Harrington, as he exited. "Your incompetence has cost us a critical meeting." "Sir, the inspection revealed a genuine safety issue that could have endangered everyone on board," Jasmine explained calmly. "We're working to resolve it as quickly as possible." "Convenient that this issue wasn't found during regular maintenance, only after you took command," he sneered. "I'll be speaking directly with your CEO about this incident." As the last passengers deplaned, William Hayes approached, his expression thunderous. "A word, Captain Taylor. Now." They moved to a quiet corner of the gate area, away from the frustrated passengers milling about. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" William hissed, keeping his voice low but intense. "Those executives represent millions in corporate accounts. The CEO is furious." "The inspection found a critical pressure regulation issue," Jasmine replied evenly. "Had we taken off, we could have faced a serious emergency situation mid-flight." "So you say," William responded, his tone making it clear he wasn't entirely convinced. "Regardless, your career at Skyway is hanging by a thread right now. The only reason you're not being removed from duty immediately is that it would cause even more delays to bring in another captain. I made the correct safety call, Mr. Hayes. The maintenance logs will confirm that. Your future assignments will reflect the company's assessment of today's decisions," William threatened. "Don't expect to be flying premium routes anytime soon. You might find yourself on cargo runs to Alaska if you're lucky enough to keep your wings at all." As William stormed off, Jasmine noticed a small crowd had gathered near the gate desk. A passenger was filming with his phone as he loudly complained to the gate agent. "This is what happens when airlines put diversity ahead of competence. We're stuck here because some affirmative action captain can't make a simple decision." The poisonous words carried across the gate area, drawing uncomfortable looks from other passengers. Jasmine straightened her uniform jacket and was about to approach when another passenger, a middle-aged black woman, stepped forward. "Excuse me, but I happen to know that the captain made exactly the right call. My husband is an aircraft mechanic, and pressure regulation issues are nothing to mess with. Would you prefer?" She ignored a safety concern just to keep your schedule intact. Before the situation could escalate further, Jasmine noticed a familiar face approaching, a local news reporter with a cameraman in tow. Someone had alerted the media to the delay and the high-profile executives involved. "Captain Taylor?" "Alicia Washington from Channel 8 News. We're hearing reports of significant delays affecting some very prominent passengers. Can you comment on allegations that Skyway is suffering from incompetent leadership in the cockpit?" The loaded question confirmed Jasmine's suspicion that someone, likely one of the executives, had contacted the media with a specific narrative already in mind. Before she could respond, Diane appeared at the reporter's side. "I'm the senior flight attendant on this flight," Diane interjected smoothly. "This delay is highly unusual for our airline. Typically, our experienced captains manage these situations much more efficiently." The deliberate undermining was the final straw in a day filled with challenges to Jasmine's authority. But before she could address Diane's comment, Bradley approached the group, surprisingly stepping to Jasmine's side. "Actually," he said, his voice carrying clearly to the reporter's microphone, "Captain Taylor made the correct safety call. Maintenance has confirmed a critical pressure regulation issue that could have created an emergency situation had we departed. Her decision potentially saved lives today." The unexpected support momentarily stunned Jasmine. Bradley's expression revealed his own surprise at his actions, as if he hadn't planned to speak up but found he couldn't remain silent in the face of such blatant mischaracterization. The reporter pivoted immediately. "So this was a genuine safety issue, not a case of overcautiousness?" "Absolutely," Bradley confirmed. "Captain Taylor prioritized passenger safety over schedule, exactly what every passenger should want their captain to do." As the news crew moved away to interview some passengers, Jasmine gave Bradley a questioning look. "Thank you for speaking up. May I ask what changed your mind?" Bradley hesitated. "Ray showed me the faulty component. It was serious. And I realized I've been part of the problem today." He lowered his voice. "Diane and William have been deliberately making things difficult for you. They were texting about it during the boarding process. I saw Diane's phone when she showed me something else." The confirmation of what Jasmine had suspected sent a chill through her. This wasn't just unconscious bias or casual discrimination, it was a coordinated effort to undermine her authority and sabotage her first flight as captain. "There's more," Bradley continued, looking uncomfortable. Diane asked several of the crew to document any mistakes you made today, no matter how small. She's building a case to submit to management. As this information sank in, Jasmine noticed Anthony Washington making his way through the terminal toward her gate. His unexpected appearance was a welcome sight amid the chaos. "Thought you might need some friendly backup," Anthony said as he approached. Word spreading through crew channels about what's happening here. "It's been challenging," Jasmine acknowledged, maintaining her professional composure despite the relief she felt seeing a supportive face. "More than challenging from what I'm hearing," Anthony replied. "I brought something you should see." He pulled out his tablet and opened a document. "This is a pattern analysis I've been compiling for the Pilots Association, incidents of discriminatory treatment reported by minority and female pilots. There's a clear clustering of reports involving certain management personnel and senior crew members." Jasmine scanned the document, recognizing many of the names, including William Hayes and Diane Patterson. The pattern was unmistakable once laid out in data form. "I can't officially submit this yet," Anthony explained, "but it provides context for what you're experiencing today. You're not imagining things, and you're not alone." The validation of her experience strengthened Jasmine's resolve. This wasn't just about one difficult flight or one challenging day, it was about a systemic issue that affected many pilots like her. As they spoke, Jasmine noticed the airline CEO, Thomas Reynolds, entering the terminal with several executives. The situation had escalated to the highest levels of management. Thomas spotted Jasmine and headed directly toward her, his expression unreadable. "Captain Taylor," he said formally. "I understand we have a situation here." "Yes, sir," Jasmine replied professionally. "Maintenance discovered a critical pressure regulation issue during inspection. Repairs are underway now." "And this issue wasn't identified during routine maintenance?" "No, sir. The logs show incomplete sign-offs from the night shift. I flagged this during my review, which led to the additional inspection." Thomas's eyes narrowed. "You're saying the maintenance logs were improperly handled before your flight?" "That's correct, sir. I have documentation showing the discrepancies." Before Thomas could respond, William Hayes interjected, having hurried over when he spotted the CEO. "Sir, this could have been handled without deplaning passengers." Other options were available that Captain Taylor chose not to explore. "Such as?" Thomas asked sharply. William faltered. "Well, a more experienced captain might have." "Might have what?" Thomas interrupted. "Ignored a safety issue? Flown with a compromised pressure system? Risked a Madeira emergency?" The direct challenge left William speechless. Thomas turned back to Jasmine. "Captain Taylor, I want to see the maintenance logs and inspection reports in my office tomorrow morning. If there's been a procedural breakdown in our maintenance protocols, I need to know exactly what happened and why." "Yes, sir," Jasmine nodded. As the CEO departed with his entourage, Jasmine felt the weight of the situation pressing down on her. She had stood her ground on safety, potentially saving lives in the process, but the professional consequences remained uncertain. The powerful forces aligned against her, from Diane's crew manipulation to William's management threats to the executive's corporate influence, created a formidable obstacle to her career advancement. Yet in this moment of crisis, unexpected allies had emerged. Bradley's public support, Anthony's documentation, and even the CEO's willingness to investigate the maintenance issues rather than simply blame her for the delay represented small victories amid the larger battle. The real test, Jasmine knew, would come in the aftermath, when the immediate crisis had passed, but the systemic issues remained. Would these moments of clarity and fairness translate into lasting change, or would the entrenched patterns of discrimination reassert themselves once the spotlight moved elsewhere? As repairs continued on the aircraft, Jasmine prepared herself for whatever came next. She had made the right call as captain, regardless of the professional consequences. And in doing so, she had demonstrated not just her technical competence but her moral courage, the willingness to stand alone, if necessary, for what was right. The path forward remained uncertain, but one thing was clear: Captain Jasmine Taylor would not be told to wait at the back ever again. The replacement valve has been installed and tested, Captain. The aircraft is airworthy. Ray handed Jasmine the freshly completed maintenance documentation, his signature bold at the bottom of the form. For what it's worth, you made the right call earlier. Not every captain would have had the guts to stand their ground with those executives breathing down their neck. Thank you, Ray, Jasmine replied, reviewing the paperwork meticulously. Your thoroughness likely prevented an emergency situation. 3 hours had passed since the initial delay. The terminal remained tense with frustrated passengers, many having missed connections or important meetings. The banking executives had been rebooked on a competitor's flight after making a very public show of their dissatisfaction with Skyway. As Jasmine finished reviewing the maintenance documents, a message came through on her company phone. Captain Taylor requested in conference room C immediately. Executive Office. The summons wasn't entirely unexpected, but its timing, just as they were preparing to finally board passengers for departure, suggested a calculated move to increase pressure on her. Jasmine handed the maintenance documentation to Bradley. Begin the pre-boarding checks. I've been called to a meeting. Bradley looked concerned. Now. We're almost ready to board. Apparently it can't wait, Jasmine replied evenly. I'll be back as soon as possible. Conference room C was located in the administrative wing of the terminal, away from passenger areas. As Jasmine approached, she could see through the glass door that several people were already gathered inside: William Hayes, 2 airline executives she recognized from headquarters, and surprisingly, Diane Patterson. The atmosphere in the room was charged with tension as Jasmine entered. William sat with his arms crossed, while Diane clutched a folder protectively. The executives, Operations Director Martha Jenkins and Chief Safety Officer Robert Daniels, had expressions that revealed nothing of their intentions. Captain Taylor, thank you for joining us, Martha began formally. We understand you're preparing for departure, so we'll keep this brief. This meeting was called to address serious concerns about today's significant delay and the manner in which you've handled your command responsibilities. I'm prepared to discuss all decisions made today, Jasmine replied professionally, remaining standing despite the empty chair clearly intended for her. The subtle power move, refusing to take the lower position while they remained elevated, was intentional. Let me be direct, Martha continued. There's a suggestion that replacing you as captain for this flight would help restore passenger confidence and ensure an on-time arrival in Atlanta. First Officer Thompson is fully qualified to take command, with another pilot already on standby to serve as first officer. The proposal was a stunning blow, a direct challenge to Jasmine's authority and competence that would effectively end her career advancement at Skyway. Being removed from command on her very first captain flight would create a permanent black mark in her record. On what grounds would I be replaced? Jasmine asked, her voice steady despite the anger building inside her. William leaned forward. Multiple grounds. Excessive caution causing unnecessary delays. Creating a hostile work environment for senior crew members. Failing to properly manage VIP passengers. Diane has documented several concerning incidents from today alone. Diane slid her folder across the table. I've compiled observations from multiple crew members about Captain Taylor's performance today. There's a clear pattern of inexperience and poor judgment. Robert Daniels, the Chief Safety Officer, opened the folder and began reviewing its contents with a frown. These are mostly subjective assessments, not procedural violations. And several contradict our standard safety protocols. The fact remains, William insisted, that Captain Taylor's actions today have cost the airline significantly, both financially and in terms of customer goodwill. The banking executives have already indicated they'll be reconsidering their corporate contract. I think we need to be clear about what actually happened today, Jasmine interjected, her voice cutting through the tension in the room. During my pre-flight inspection, I identified irregularities in the maintenance documentation that suggested improper sign-offs. When I requested verification, maintenance discovered a critical pressure regulation issue that could have resulted in a serious emergency situation at cruising altitude. She placed her own documentation on the table, the original maintenance logs, the inspection reports, and Ray's final assessment. Had we departed without addressing this issue, we would potentially have been dealing with a mid-air decompression event that could have endangered everyone on board. I made the decision that passenger safety took priority over schedule adherence, a decision that aligns perfectly with Skyway's own stated safety policies. Martha and Robert exchanged glances, clearly not having been fully briefed on the technical aspects of the delay. Additionally, Jasmine continued, her confidence growing as she presented the facts. I have reason to believe that certain crew members and management personnel have been actively undermining my authority from the moment I arrived at the gate. She detailed the morning's events systematically. Diane's initial refusal to acknowledge her as captain, the persistent questioning of her decisions, the coincidental maintenance alert that came only after she took command, and the coordinated efforts to document any perceived mistakes. If we're discussing performance concerns, Jasmine concluded, I believe we should include the unprofessional behavior of senior crew members who prioritized personal bias over operational safety. The room fell silent as her words hung in the air. Robert Daniels studied the maintenance reports with increasing concern, while Martha seemed to be reassessing the situation entirely. William attempted to regain control of the narrative. This is clearly an attempt to deflect from your own shortcomings, Captain Taylor. The fact remains that a more experienced captain would have handled this situation more efficiently. Would they? Jasmine challenged. Would a more experienced captain have ignored an incomplete maintenance log? Would they have dismissed a pressure regulation issue to keep high-value passengers happy? Would prioritizing schedule over safety have been the correct decision today? She turned directly to Robert Daniels. As Chief Safety Officer, what does Skyway's safety management system specify regarding captain authority when maintenance irregularities are identified? Robert cleared his throat. Our protocols are clear. The captain has final authority and responsibility for the safety of the aircraft. They are explicitly empowered to delay or cancel a flight if they have any safety concerns, regardless of commercial implications. And is there any protocol suggesting that passenger status or corporate relationships should influence safety decisions? Jasmine pressed. Absolutely not, Robert replied firmly. Safety is our first priority, without exception. William shifted uncomfortably. No one is suggesting safety protocols should be compromised. The issue is Captain Taylor's judgment and the way she handled the situation. My judgment led to the discovery of a serious mechanical issue that could have endangered lives, Jasmine responded. That's not poor judgment, that's precisely what I was trained to do. At that moment, Bradley knocked and entered the conference room, looking slightly flustered. Excuse the interruption, but there's something you all need to see. He placed his tablet on the table, showing what appeared to be a technical diagram of the aircraft's pressure regulation system with timestamps and testing data. This is from Ray's final inspection report. The pressure valve wasn't just worn or slightly malfunctioning, it was showing signs of tampering. The revelation sent a ripple of shock through the room. Jasmine leaned forward to examine the report more closely. Ray believes someone deliberately misadjusted the valve settings during recent maintenance, Bradley explained. Had we taken off, the system would likely have failed once we reached cruising altitude. We would have had approximately 6 minutes to respond before risking structural damage to the aircraft. Martha's expression hardened as she processed this information. Are you suggesting sabotage, First Officer Thompson? I'm reporting what the maintenance inspector found, Bradley replied carefully. Ray has already notified security and is preserving the component for investigation. The atmosphere in the room shifted dramatically. What had begun as a tribunal questioning Jasmine's competence had transformed into something far more serious, a potential security breach with life-threatening implications. Robert Daniels stood abruptly. This meeting is over. Captain Taylor will continue in command of her flight. I want full documentation of everyone who had access to that aircraft in the past 24 hours on my desk immediately. William attempted one final objection. "We still need to address the passenger confidence issue. Perhaps if we offer them assurance that an experienced captain—" "An experienced captain just prevented a potential disaster," Robert interrupted sharply. "I think that's all the assurance they need." As the meeting disbanded, Diane pulled William aside, their hushed conversation clearly heated. Jasmine gathered her documentation, her mind racing with the implications of Bradley's revelation. Had someone deliberately created a dangerous situation to undermine her first flight as captain? The possibility was almost too disturbing to contemplate. Martha approached Jasmine before she could leave. "Captain Taylor, I owe you an apology. I was not fully briefed on the technical aspects of this situation before this meeting was arranged." "I appreciate that," Jasmine replied professionally. "For what it's worth," Martha continued, lowering her voice, "the CEO has been receiving concerning reports about similar situations involving William Hayes and certain senior crew members. Your experience today will not be dismissed." The acknowledgement was small comfort against the backdrop of what Jasmine had endured, but it represented something critical, the beginning of recognition that the challenges she faced weren't simply personal hurdles but systemic issues requiring institutional attention. As Jasmine left the conference room, she found Anthony waiting in the hallway. "How bad was it?" he asked. "They wanted to remove me from command," Jasmine replied quietly. "But there's been a development. The maintenance issue wasn't just a malfunction, Ray found evidence of tampering." Anthony's expression darkened. "This goes beyond discrimination into something much more serious." "One battle at a time," Jasmine said, checking her watch. "Right now, I have passengers waiting to complete their journey to Atlanta." They walked together toward the gate, where passengers were beginning to line up for boarding. News of the aircraft being cleared for departure had lifted the mood slightly, though many remained frustrated by the lengthy delay. As Jasmine approached the gate, she saw Diane already there, speaking with passengers. Their eyes met briefly, Diane's filled with a mixture of defiance and something that might have been fear, Jasmine's steady with the quiet confidence of someone who knew she had made the right decisions despite overwhelming pressure. The real test still lay ahead, returning to the cockpit, regaining the confidence of her passengers, and safely navigating through the severe weather that had only intensified during their delay. But Jasmine Taylor had not come this far to falter now. With each step toward the aircraft, her resolve strengthened. She was Captain Taylor, not because someone had granted her the title, but because she had earned it through excellence, perseverance, and an unwavering commitment to the highest principles of aviation. Today had tested those principles to their limits, and both she and the principles had held firm. Whatever challenges awaited in the cockpit, she would face them as she had faced every obstacle in her career, with precision, professionalism, and the quiet determination that had carried her through countless situations where others expected her to fail. The sky was waiting, and Captain Jasmine Taylor was ready to claim her rightful place in it. The boarding process proceeded with remarkable efficiency, the crew seeming to understand the importance of avoiding further delays. Jasmine stood at the aircraft door, welcoming passengers with calm professionalism despite the lingering tension throughout the terminal. "Good afternoon. Welcome aboard Skyway 1523 to Atlanta. I'm Captain Taylor. Thank you for your patience today." Some passengers nodded politely, others avoided eye contact, and a few offered genuine words of appreciation after hearing about the discovered mechanical issue. As the cabin filled, Jasmine overheard snippets of conversation about the delay, the weather, and, inevitably, about her. "Did you know the captain is a black woman?" one passenger whispered to another, not quite quietly enough. "First time I've ever seen that. I just hope she knows what she's doing with these storms," another replied. Diane moved through the cabin with professional efficiency, her interaction with Jasmine limited to terse, formal communications. "Captain, all passengers accounted for except seats 12A through 12C. Still waiting on those." "Thank you, Ms. Patterson," Jasmine replied, maintaining the formal address that served as a small reminder of their respective positions. The flight deck preparations were nearly complete when William Hayes appeared at the jet bridge entrance, accompanied by Thomas Reynolds, the CEO. Their unexpected presence sent a ripple of tension through Jasmine's shoulders. "Captain Taylor," Thomas began, "a moment of your time before departure." "Of course, sir," Jasmine replied, stepping aside to speak with them privately. "I wanted to personally inform you that I've reviewed the initial reports about today's incident," Thomas said. "Your decision to delay for the maintenance inspection was completely correct, and the discovery of potential tampering is being taken extremely seriously. A full investigation is already underway." "Thank you, sir," Jasmine responded, surprised by the direct validation. "I've also asked Mr. Hayes to make a statement to the passengers before departure," Thomas continued, giving William a pointed look. "To clarify that the delay was due to a critical safety issue that you correctly identified." William's expression suggested this wasn't his idea, but he nodded stiffly. "Yes, of course. One more thing," Thomas added. "The banking executives who were so vocal about their dissatisfaction. Their flight with our competitor was just diverted due to the weather system you identified hours ago. Sometimes correct decisions prove themselves in unexpected ways." With that, Thomas departed, leaving William to address the passengers. His announcement was brief but clear, validating the safety concerns that had necessitated the delay and acknowledging Jasmine's correct handling of the situation. Though his words were appropriate, the tension in his delivery suggested this public support was anything but voluntary. As final preparations for departure continued, Bradley entered the cockpit with a troubled expression. "Captain, we have a situation. I need to remove myself from duty." "What? Why?" Jasmine asked, alarmed by this last-minute development. "I'm experiencing severe stomach cramps and nausea," Bradley explained, his complexion indeed showing signs of distress. "I can't safely perform my duties in this condition." The timing couldn't have been worse. Without a first officer, the flight would have to be cancelled, a development that would inevitably be attributed to Jasmine regardless of the actual cause. After the extended delay and the high-profile attention, such a cancellation would be disastrous for her professional standing. "How severe are your symptoms?" Jasmine asked, assessing Bradley carefully. "Bad enough that I don't think I should be flying," he replied, grimacing. "Started about 20 minutes ago. Getting worse." The timing was suspicious, coming immediately after William's forced public support of Jasmine. She couldn't help wondering if this was yet another attempt to undermine her authority, a final effort to force the cancellation of her first captain flight after all other tactics had failed. Before she could respond, William appeared at the cockpit door. "Is there a problem?" "First Officer Thompson is ill," Jasmine explained. "We're assessing whether he can continue his duties." A flash of something, relief, satisfaction, crossed William's face before he composed his expression into one of concern. "That's unfortunate. Without a first officer, you'll have to cancel the flight." "Unless we can find a qualified replacement quickly," Jasmine responded, already calculating options. "On such short notice?" "Impossible," William stated. "The standby pilots have already been assigned to other flights due to the weather disruptions. I'm afraid you'll have to deplane the passengers and cancel." The statement was delivered with just a hint of satisfaction, as if this outcome, while regrettable for the airline, represented a personal victory for William. The flight would be cancelled on Jasmine's watch, creating exactly the perception of incompetence that her detractors had been working to establish all day. "Perhaps," William suggested with false concern, "it would be best if you stepped down and allowed another captain to take this flight when one becomes available. For the sake of the passengers, of course." The implication was clear, this was her chance to exit the situation with some dignity rather than face the public failure of a cancelled flight. It was a trap designed to force her to voluntarily relinquish the command she had fought so hard to earn. Jasmine was formulating her response when a familiar voice spoke from behind William. "I believe I can help with this situation." Anthony Washington stood in the jet bridge, already in his full pilot's uniform. First Officer Anthony Washington, reporting for duty. William turned sharply. What are you doing here in uniform, Washington? You're not on the schedule today. Actually, I am now, Anthony replied calmly, holding up his company tablet displaying his updated assignment. As of 15 minutes ago, I was added to the standby roster by crew scheduling, and I've just been assigned to Skyway 1523 as first officer. That's impossible, William sputtered. I spoke with scheduling personally. They confirmed no pilots were available. Perhaps you should check again, Anthony suggested. The assignment is official. And as I'm current and qualified on this aircraft type, there should be no issue with me assuming first officer duties immediately. Jasmine fought to keep her expression neutral despite the surge of relief. Anthony's appearance wasn't coincidence, it was a calculated move to counter the apparent sabotage attempt. William's face flushed with anger. This is highly irregular. I need to verify this assignment before I can approve. With all due respect, Mr. Hayes, Jasmine interrupted, crew assignments don't require your personal approval. First Officer Washington is qualified, current, and officially assigned. Unless you have a specific safety concern about his fitness for duty, we're proceeding with our departure preparations. William looked ready to object further when Thomas Reynolds appeared once more at the jet bridge entrance. Is there another issue delaying departure, Mr. Hayes? Caught between his desire to block Anthony's assignment and the CEO's clear expectation that the flight would proceed, William found himself trapped. No, sir. Just verifying the proper protocols for last-minute crew changes. Those protocols fall under my department, Thomas reminded him. And I've already approved First Officer Washington's assignment. Is there anything else holding up this departure? William's jaw tightened. No, sir. Everything is in order. Excellent. Then I suggest we let Captain Taylor and her crew get these passengers to Atlanta without further delays. Thomas's pointed look made it clear that William's interference was neither welcome nor wise. As William reluctantly withdrew, Bradley rose shakily from the first officer's seat. I'll file the proper medical report, he mumbled to Jasmine, his eyes not quite meeting hers. Whether his illness was genuine or manufactured remained an open question, but the outcome was the same, he would not be flying today. Anthony settled efficiently into the first officer position, quickly familiarizing himself with the setup. Ready when you are, Captain. The flight deck door closed, creating a momentary sanctuary from the drama that had plagued the day. Jasmine took a deep breath, centering herself in the familiar environment of gauges, controls, and procedures. Thank you, she said quietly to Anthony. That was quite the timely arrival. Let's just say I had a feeling something like this might happen, Anthony replied. After our conversation earlier, I put myself on standby status. When Bradley suddenly reported ill, scheduling called me immediately. Jasmine nodded, understanding the unspoken reality. Anthony had anticipated this final attempt to derail her command and had positioned himself as a countermeasure. His foresight and loyalty had prevented what would have been a devastating professional setback. The cabin interphone buzzed, and Diane's voice came through. Captain, the cabin is secured for departure. All passengers are aboard and seated. Thank you, Ms. Patterson, Jasmine responded professionally. We'll be pushing back momentarily. There was a brief pause before Diane spoke again, her voice lower, almost hesitant. Captain Taylor. I want to apologize for my behavior earlier today. It was unprofessional and inappropriate. The unexpected apology caught Jasmine off guard. Whether motivated by genuine remorse or simply fear of the pending investigation into the day's events, it represented a significant shift in Diane's attitude. Thank you, Ms. Patterson, Jasmine replied evenly. I trust we can work together professionally from this point forward. Yes, Captain. You have my full cooperation. As Jasmine and Anthony completed their pre-departure checklist, the weather radar showed the storm system had intensified considerably during their extended delay. The line of thunderstorms now stretched across much of their planned route, with tops reaching 50,000 feet and severe turbulence reported by aircraft in the vicinity. "That doesn't look friendly," Anthony observed, studying the radar display. "No, it doesn't," Jasmine agreed. "We'll need to coordinate with ATC for deviation. The eastern corridor looks less severe, but we'll still have to thread between some significant cells." As they pushed back from the gate, a palpable sense of relief permeated the aircraft. After hours of delay and drama, they were finally moving. Jasmine's voice carried clear and confident over the passenger announcement system. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Taylor speaking. We are now departing for Atlanta. Our flight time will be approximately 2 hours and 15 minutes. As you may be aware, we're dealing with a significant weather system along our route. I want to assure you that we'll be navigating safely around the most severe areas, though we do anticipate some turbulence during portions of our flight. Please keep your seatbelts fastened whenever you're seated, even if the seatbelt sign is turned off. The cabin crew is here for your safety and comfort, so please follow their instructions. Thank you for your patience today, and we'll do our best to make the remainder of your journey as smooth as possible." The taxi to the runway proceeded without incident, the massive aircraft responding to Jasmine's commands with the precision she had always appreciated. In the cockpit, the complex dance of checklists, communications, and systems management flowed naturally between Jasmine and Anthony, two pilots at the top of their game, working in seamless coordination. As they lined up for takeoff, Jasmine felt a moment of profound clarity. Despite all the obstacles, challenges, and blatant attempts to undermine her authority, she was here, commanding this aircraft, responsible for the lives of everyone on board, demonstrating through action rather than words that she belonged in the captain's seat. "Skyway 1523, you are cleared for takeoff, runway 27 left," the tower controller announced. "Skyway 1523, cleared for takeoff, runway 27 left," Jasmine confirmed, advancing the throttles smoothly. The engines responded with a surge of power, pressing Jasmine back into her seat as the aircraft accelerated down the runway. In these moments of takeoff, the outside world fell away, no discrimination, no politics, no bias, just the pure physics of flight and the skill to harness it. As the aircraft rotated and lifted into the sky, Jasmine felt the familiar sensation of transcendence that had drawn her to aviation since childhood. Up here, among the clouds, she was defined by her abilities alone. That feeling of liberation was short-lived. As they climbed through 10,000 feet, the aircraft began to buffet in the preliminary turbulence of the approaching weather system. The radar painted an increasingly concerning picture. The storm cells had merged and intensified, creating fewer viable paths through the weather. "ATC is reporting extreme turbulence at our planned cruising altitude," Anthony noted. "Multiple aircraft diverting or turning back." Jasmine studied the weather displays intently. "We need to request a lower altitude. 31,000 might keep us under the worst of it while still clearing the terrain ahead." She contacted air traffic control, securing approval for the altitude change and a slight easterly deviation. The cabin interphone buzzed again. "Captain, we're experiencing strong turbulence in the cabin," Diane reported, her voice tense but controlled. "Several passengers are becoming anxious. We're working to find a smoother altitude," Jasmine assured her. "Please ensure everyone remains seated with seatbelts fastened. We'll be in this for at least the next 20 minutes." The turbulence intensified as they penetrated the outer bands of the storm system. Rain lashed against the windscreen, and lightning illuminated the darkened clouds around them. The aircraft bucked and shuddered, occasionally dropping suddenly before the autopilot could compensate. Jasmine switched to manual control, feeling the aircraft respond more directly to her inputs. This was the kind of flying that separated good pilots from great ones, the ability to read the air, to anticipate the movements of the aircraft, to maintain control when the elements seemed determined to take it away. "Caution, wind shear ahead," the automated warning system announced. The most dangerous of aviation weather phenomena loomed before them, powerful, unpredictable shifts in wind direction and speed that could steal lift from the wings in seconds. Go around it or through it? Anthony asked, tension evident in his voice. Jasmine assessed their options quickly. Going around would mean a significant deviation into areas with reported severe icing, another serious hazard. Going through meant facing the wind shear head-on, a risky proposition even for the most skilled pilots. Through it, she decided. But we'll descend another 2,000 feet first. The wind shear layer appears thinner at that altitude. She keyed the cabin interphone. Cabin crew, secure for possible severe turbulence. This is not an emergency, but we're about to encounter some challenging conditions. The aircraft descended into darker clouds, the turbulence becoming more violent. In the cabin, passengers gripped their armrests, many closing their eyes or murmuring prayers. The sound of the rain against the fuselage increased to a deafening roar. Wind shear. Wind shear. The warning system blared as they entered the most intense part of the storm. The aircraft lurched dramatically, losing altitude rapidly before Jasmine corrected with practiced precision. Engine anti-ice system failure, Anthony called out, pointing to the warning light that had just illuminated. Left engine temperature dropping. This was a genuine emergency now. Ice accumulation in the engine could lead to flameout or catastrophic damage. Jasmine responded immediately, increasing power to the affected engine to generate more heat while adjusting their course to exit the icing conditions as quickly as possible. Declaring an emergency? Anthony asked, his hand hovering over the radio. Jasmine made a split-second assessment. Not yet. Let's see if the temperature stabilizes. Prepare the emergency checklist, but hold off on the declaration unless the situation deteriorates. It was a calculated risk. Declaring an emergency would give them priority handling from air traffic control but would also trigger a cascade of consequences upon landing, including mandatory investigations and potential impacts to her newly established captain status. If she could manage the situation without the declaration, it would be the cleaner outcome. The next 5 minutes were among the most intense of Jasmine's career. Fighting turbulence that threatened to tear the controls from her hands, managing an engine system failure, navigating through a maze of thunderstorm cells, and maintaining a calm exterior for the benefit of everyone on board, it was the ultimate test of her capabilities as captain. Gradually, the engine temperature began to rise as they exited the worst of the icing conditions. The wind shear warning ceased, and though the turbulence continued, its intensity diminished. They had navigated through the heart of the storm and emerged on the other side. Engine parameters returning to normal range, Anthony confirmed, relief evident in his voice. We did it, Captain. We're not in Atlanta yet, Jasmine reminded him, though she allowed herself a small smile. The most dangerous part of their journey appeared to be behind them, but vigilance remained essential. In the cabin, the interphone buzzed once more. Captain, Diane's voice came through, sounding genuinely impressed. That was some remarkable flying. The passengers are a bit shaken, but everyone's okay. Several people have actually asked me to tell you they've never felt safer, despite the rough ride. Thank you, Ms. Patterson, Jasmine replied. Please let the passengers know we've cleared the worst of the weather. We should have smoother conditions for the remainder of our flight to Atlanta. As they continued toward their destination, the skies gradually cleared, the late afternoon sun breaking through the clouds to bathe the cockpit in golden light. The aircraft systems had stabilized, the flight path was now direct, and a sense of calm settled over the flight deck. You know, Anthony said thoughtfully, what you did back there, handling that wind shear and engine issue simultaneously, that was textbook perfect. Most captains with years of experience couldn't have managed it better. I had good support, Jasmine acknowledged, nodding toward him. That makes all the difference. No, this was all you, Anthony insisted. I've flown with a lot of captains, and I've never seen anyone handle conditions that severe with such precision. It wasn't luck, it wasn't the aircraft, it was pure skill. The sincere appreciation from a respected colleague carried more weight than any formal recognition. In that moment, Jasmine realized something profound. regardless of the discrimination and obstacles she had faced throughout her career, her excellence as a pilot was undeniable. No amount of bias could change the reality that she belonged in the captain's seat, not because of diversity initiatives or quota systems, but because she was simply that good. The remainder of the flight proceeded smoothly, the earlier drama seeming distant as they began their descent into Atlanta. The city lights sparkled below, welcoming them after their challenging journey. Jasmine's landing was flawless, the aircraft touching down with barely a bump despite the gusty crosswind conditions that remained in the storm's aftermath. As they taxied to the gate, spontaneous applause erupted from the cabin. The passengers' relief at their safe arrival, combined with their awareness of the skilled flying that had brought them through the severe weather, manifested in this genuine appreciation. Jasmine completed the shutdown checklist with the same meticulous attention she brought to every aspect of her profession. Only when the final items were complete did she allow herself to fully absorb what she had accomplished today, not just surviving the attempts to undermine her authority, but demonstrating beyond any doubt that she deserved the command she had earned. "Nice work, Captain Taylor," Anthony said with a respectful nod as they prepared to leave the flight deck. "First day as captain, and you've already handled more than most pilots see in their entire careers." Jasmine smiled, the weight of the day's challenges finally lifting from her shoulders. "Something tells me this is just the beginning." As they stepped into the jet bridge, they were surprised to find a small group waiting, not just the standard ground crew, but several members of Atlanta-based management and, unexpectedly, a film crew from a local news station. "Captain Taylor?" A reporter stepped forward. "We've been hearing reports of exceptional piloting through today's severe weather system. Multiple passengers have been sharing on social media about how your skills got them safely through conditions that caused many other flights to divert or turn back. Would you be willing to share your experience?" The story that William and Diane had tried to shape, of an inexperienced, unqualified diversity hire creating unnecessary delays, had transformed into something entirely different, a narrative of exceptional skill, sound judgment, and remarkable courage in the face of genuinely dangerous conditions. As cameras turned toward her, Jasmine stood tall in her captain's uniform, the 4 gold stripes on her shoulders catching the light. The journey that had begun with a dismissive "wait at the back" had culminated in this moment of undeniable validation. Whatever challenges lay ahead in her career, she had proven beyond any doubt, to herself, to her colleagues, and now to the world, exactly where she belonged. At the front, in command, leading the way for those who would follow. Jasmine Taylor's story teaches us that excellence is the most powerful response to discrimination. When faced with bias, she didn't lower her standards, she raised them. She understood that in fields where people like her are underrepresented, perfection isn't just a goal, it's often a requirement. The story also highlights the importance of allies. Without Anthony's support and Bradley's eventual honesty, Jasmine's battle would have been even more difficult. Change rarely happens through the efforts of a single person, it requires others willing to recognize injustice and take action. Perhaps most importantly, Jasmine's journey reminds us that safety and integrity should never be compromised, regardless of pressure. By standing firm on her safety decision despite threats to her career, she demonstrated that true leadership means doing what's right, not what's convenient or popular. Finally, Jasmine's triumph shows that breaking barriers isn't just about personal success, it's about creating pathways for others. By mentoring the next generation, she ensures that progress continues, making each subsequent journey slightly easier than her own. The sky belongs to everyone with the skill and determination to claim it. Discrimination may create turbulence, but it cannot prevent those who refuse to be grounded from ultimately taking flight. What barriers have you faced in your own life or career? Have you ever had to stand your ground like Jasmine when others doubted your abilities because of who you are? Share your story in the comments below, your experience might inspire someone facing similar challenges right now. If you found value in Jasmine's journey, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories about overcoming discrimination and breaking barriers. These narratives matter, and your support helps us continue sharing them with the world. Don't forget to share this video with someone who might need this message today. perhaps a young person being told they don't belong, or a colleague facing workplace discrimination. Sometimes the right story at the right moment can make all the difference. Thank you for watching Redirected Dreams. Remember, your destination isn't determined by those who tell you where you can't go, it's charted by your own courage, competence, and determination to rise above the limitations others try to impose.